We're born into a world where gender equality does not exist. But when we're born, we don't actually know that, because what happens is the neural pathways are created in our brains by everything that is presented to us within our realm. So that's our family, our friends, our social groups that we're in, our communities, anything that we are part of, all of that creates the neural pathways in your brain. That creates all your thoughts and everything that you know from the moment that you're born till you progress through childhood and then into adulthood, till it comes to a point where you realise, oh, actually, some of this isn't right. But until you get to that point in your life, you believe everything that's presented within your existence. So one of the earliest experiences that I have as a child is of my mum and biological dad physically fighting in the street. And it was the main street of the village that we lived in, and my dad basically jumped out the car and a fight ensued, a physical fight. And I remember, I was 4 years old, I was absolutely terrified. I don't remember the specifics of the actual physical fight, but I remember it was happening, and I ran across a main road into the local co-op, and I begged the ladies to come and help. Please come and help my mum. Please come and help my mum. That's what I remember I was saying. And it happened, and, you know, they helped. But I remember being absolutely terrified that day. And from that actual day, right into my childhood and my adulthood, and well into my adulthood, I remained terrified of my biological dad. I have only put that to bed in my 40s. I'm 46. That's how long that stayed with me. So shortly before that, my mum had left the marital home with me and my 6-month-old brother, basically taking just what she could carry, plus the two of us, to my gran's house. My gran lived in a 2-bedroom council house, and we all stayed in my gran's front bedroom. She only had a double bed. The three of us stayed in that bed until my mum was able to get a set of bunk beds from social services. And we still, the three of us, me and my brother had our bed on the bunk beds, and then my mum slept in the double bed, but we're there for 4 years. It was 4 years before my mum was able to get on her feet, get a job, and then we could get our own council house, and then we moved in there. And because my mum was a single parent, because I'd lived with my gran, and for various other reasons, I spent a huge amount of my childhood growing up with my gran. And one of the stories that my gran used to always tell was about her firstborn child, my Auntie Margaret. And she always referred to her as that, as if, and I do believe this myself, as if she was still there, and I know that she is still here. You know, and the story was that Margaret contracted pneumonia. This was the 1940s, at 10 months old. And at that time, if the baby had to go to the hospital, the mum wasn't allowed to go. It had to be the man. So they took her to hospital with my grandpa. And even with him, he wasn't allowed to stay in the hospital. He was sent home to await news with my gran on their baby, their only child, their firstborn baby. And there they were, sitting in the house, just waiting on news. 3 days later, there was a knock on the door, and the policeman was there to tell my gran that her baby had died. And that was it. That's how she found out that her 10-month-old baby had died. And when I was wee, and my gran would tell that story constantly, my gran, till the day she died, told that story. She then went on to have my other auntie and my mum. But it took her a long time. There was many, many years passed before she did. But she constantly taught it. I don't think she ever actually got over it. And for me, I used to think, why would they not let the mother of a child be there? At first, I used to just accept it. I just accepted that's what happened. But then as I got older, I would say to my gran, but go and tell me that story again, because like I just don't really understand. And she always told the exact same story. And on top of that, women weren't allowed to go to funerals. So my grandpa basically carried the wee white coffin, and she told me all this detail, out to the car or the vehicle, whatever it was that took them to the funeral parlour. And took her to her final resting place. So she didn't even get to go to her funeral, because women in the 1940s didn't go to funerals. They say that childhood experience is the biggest factor in personal and spiritual development. It's the biggest drawback of spiritual and personal development. When I say spiritual, the person that you are, it affects any sort of development that you want to progress with in your mind. Fast forward about, trying to think, 1983, I had an experience where I was crossing the road, and I got hit by a car. It was a man that was putting me across the road. I was 10 years old, quite old to get hit by a car. I did know my green cross code. I was actually capable of crossing the road on my own, but this elderly gentleman insisted on putting me across the road. As he took my hand, I put my complete trust into him. I didn't even look at the road. I just let him put me across the road. I remember him letting go of my hand and saying, "Right, hen." And as I stepped out onto the road, I became up here somewhere. The only way I can describe it is that I had an out-of-body experience at 10 years old. This is how it happened as I saw it. I stepped out onto the road. I watched myself from here. I took about 4 or 5 steps. I was running, although I was visualising it and seeing it in slow motion. I got hit by the car, up into the air, and lay on the road. I watched myself lying on the road. Within seconds, I was back in my body, and I was asking for my mum. I was fully conscious, and I was saying, "Where's my mum? Where's my mum?" And the feelings that I had at that time were 2 things. I was completely euphoric that I'd survived. I was thinking, please, thank you, God. Thank you for letting me live, because I thought that was what dying was, that whole experience that I'd had. But the second thought I had was, oh, my mum is going to kill me for this. I am going to get leathered for this. Carry on. Because that was just how it was for me. That was my experience as a child. That's how children were treated. It was completely different to how my child's experience is. And the reason I'm telling you that story is just to build a picture of where my confidence and what I was and what made the things that I was. Fast forward again to when I started my corporate career. I went into a massive corporate organisation. Straight from college, 20 years of age, and in my office at that time, some men were handsy and women weren't allowed to wear trousers. Now that handsy thing wasn't the first time that I'd experienced that, and just about every woman that I have spoken to since I've been creating this talk have an experience of that. And I would almost say every woman sitting here will have an experience that they can tell. It's, that they can tell to if they want to talk about it. But like I say, I don't remember having the conscious thought of, at that point, this isn't right. It was almost as if subconsciously that's what women had to accept. This was only 26 years ago. That's my experience of this is only 26 years ago. However, I am aware that the whole gender equality has progressed massively in just over 100 years, but it is only 100 years. It's only 100 years that women have had the right to vote. It's actually nothing in the whole scheme of things. It's 2019. Thousands and thousands of years before that, women lived as the subordinate gender in society. So I know that we're making progress. I know that it's not that I'm saying women have to be up here and men have to be down here. I'm not saying that. We need to get an equal balance for both genders. And it's up to us as a community of women to drive that forward. It is your choice. You don't have to do it. You don't have to be an empowered woman if you don't want to. But it is something that if we do it together, we can achieve and challenge gender inequality a lot quicker. For me, I don't really know what age I was, again, when I stood up for myself, metaphorically, and realised that I actually had a battle on my hands in terms of women achieving the status. It's well known that men still dominate the top jobs in the UK. The world problems are even bigger than that, but men still dominate these jobs. We know about the gender pay gap in education. Men dominate the fields of science. We know that these things exist. And it's not about, I'm married. It's not about having this whole man-hating campaign. I've got a husband, I've got brothers, I've got loads of male friends. We're not talking about every man here. It's just some men. And then I've got the whole experience with social media that I have every week, whereby, because I'm exposed on Instagram especially, I get messages every single week propositioning me or whatever, and completely, utterly inappropriate messages. Now, I'm assuming they're men. They're from men, male names, but I don't know for a fact if these are men. However, I would hazard a guess that the biggest majority are. Like I say, I get them every week. I expose them, though. When I get these messages, I share them. I'm not putting up with it. I feel that from my corporate working experience, that this has actually evolved with this whole unacceptable behaviour. It's gone from handsy to, here's another avenue that we can actually exploit this actual situation. And we'll just send in appropriate messages and hope for the best. I have had husbands of women that I know, women that have children message me, and I find it hugely offensive, which is why on my social media platform of Instagram, I share it. I tell people, this is what I'm receiving, and I don't accept it. I don't like it, and it's not something that I'm going to encourage. In fact, I'm going to always show it and share it. And also, in terms of social media platforms, none of them are exempt from this. I have had it on LinkedIn. I have had personal emails where they've lifted my email address off LinkedIn and sent me a private email wanting to get to know me better. So there isn't a social media platform that it doesn't happen on. So I totally don't accept that at all. So for me, the whole personal development journey of finding my women power, like I say, I don't really know when it happened. I had my baby when I was 38. Things totally changed for me in terms of my career. I walked out a 19-year career at that point, which was extremely successful. But it just wasn't the person that I was at that time. And I embarked on quite a deep personal and spiritual development journey. And I wanted to share with you just this one slide. And it is just my journey and the stuff that I believe worked for me. For me, I had to change the neural pathways in my brain, because I've told you these stories from childhood, which I now know are the foundations to creating the person that you are. And any adverse experiences that you've had as a child will have a massive effect on your adult life. It's a fact. You can Google stuff like that. There's quite a lot of work being done on ACEs. You'll hear people, especially people that work in social work, talking about ACEs, that is adverse childhood experiences. So they're now actually recognising it as trauma that needs to be addressed, especially in adulthood. So it creates the neural pathways in your brain. As I said earlier, It's the nerve endings that connect, that creates these thoughts, feelings, and emotions. It's science in your brain that creates that. So I did a massive amount of research on neuroplasticity, which is changing your brain. I'm not a neuroscientist, by the way. I'm not. I've just done research on it because for me, I needed that. I needed to know how in God's green earth does somebody like me, with, you know, just a few of the things that I've told you about, become somebody that can stand up and speak like this and deliver a presentation, because actually this is what I want to do. I want to empower women. And if you had asked me to do this 12 months ago, I would rather have shown my bare bum in Argyle Street. So that's where I was just a year ago. I've had, you know, loads of coaching and embarked on loads of different personal development type journeys and exercises. But this is what I've come up with as my cast iron 6 things. If there's one, you know, piece of information on the whole that you take away from this particular presentation, it's this. Mindfulness, meditation, again, you can Google this, scientifically proven to be the single biggest activity that you can take part in to change the shape of your brain. So if you think that you are not good enough, start with meditation, because that will start to change your brain. The whole neuroplasticity thing, having the thought of I'm not good enough, just simply changing it to I am good enough. I am good enough. I am good enough. And you repeat it every day, day in, day out, as simple as that. Your brain will start to automatically think that, whether you like it or not. If you practice it, when anything adverse comes into your life, because it will, that thought will come right into your mind. But wait a minute, I am good enough because I've practiced it. That's how easy it is. That's the exercise you need to do in your brain to change it. And with meditation, it supports it. Choices is linked to meditation. It's about making the right decisions in the moment. You know, being able to say, no, I don't accept that. No, I'm not going to do that. No, if a man is being inappropriate, you stand up and say, I'm not accepting that. I am good enough. Dreams in the personal development world, they call this goals. I like the word dreams better because everybody can dream, and it's a much easier word to work with. And people dream day in, day out, and daydreaming is amazing because you can daydream anything that you want and think to yourself, I'm going to have that. I'm just going to have this wee, dream. And it's not living or dying by that dream. And if you don't get it, your world is going to end. It's just having things to aim for that are nice to have, that you want to have in your life. Repeat, repeat, repeat. What I was saying about I am good enough, I am good enough. Don't forget it, I am good enough. That creates the neural pathway in your brain so that when anything adverse happens, it automatically refers to that I am good enough. Passion is the fuel to your dreams. If you don't have the feeling, the passion, the emotion, it's pointless. You really need to want it and believe it for it to happen. And belief, self-explanatory.